In this video, I'm going to give you arguments, and I truly believe this, why XRP will never reach $10,000. So let's get started. And I'm telling you this, but I don't want you to do it just yet. If you're enjoying the video or useful, please like or subscribe. It helps me out. Before we start, in the description, we've updated the Wix Exchange and Kaiser promotion. You can create an account in 1 minute, deposit up to $10,000, and get a $2,000 trading bonus. Use it for a week, and all money made is yours. It's free money. You just need to transfer the money to your futures account and leave it there for 3 days. After that, a manual verification will be done. You need to link a phone number and an email, and from there you'll receive up to $2,000 in trading bonus. Take advantage of it because I managed to renew it after $1.1 million entered the exchange last month. It's honestly insane. Last month, they gave out $200,000 in trading bonuses, and many of you have messaged me privately to thank me, and I truly appreciate it. Simply because some of you have made $1,000 with the $2,000 trading bonus, others $1,500, others $500, and some just $150. But hey, it's literally free money. I'll be waiting for you inside Wix. Now, let's go straight to CoinMarketCap. And the first argument I have to make to reach the conclusion that XRP will never reach $10,000 is this. A lot of you, or many people in the comments, say the following: Johnny, but in 2010 Bitcoin was practically worthless, and look at what it's worth now. And that's true, you are absolutely right. The only difference is that XRP is not at the same point in time as Bitcoin was when it first appeared. Anyone investing in XRP right now isn't investing in XRP when it first came out. They're investing in XRP as it is today, not when it was first launched. I can accept the idea that someone who invested in XRP when it was at 1 cent in 2013 could have made 1,000 times, 2,000 times, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 times their money, just like someone who invested in Bitcoin at 5 cents could have made 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 times their investment, or even more. But the conditions aren't the same. XRP has been listed on CoinMarketCap since August 2013. XRP came out in 2012. XRP already has a history. If XRP were to reach $10,000 per unit, that would automatically be 5,000 times your money from the current price. And a little later in the video, we're going to calculate in real numbers, in actual terms, how much money that would be. The next thing you need to understand is how price and time work. A lot of times, we only look at assets based on their price. How much could it go up in value? But we never ask ourselves the next question: how much could it go up in value, and in how much time? When is that going to happen? We can see that since 2013, XRP started out being worth just a few cents, and the increase in value it has had since it appeared is absolutely insane. And honestly, I'm really happy for everyone who made money with XRP. By the way, in case you didn't know, I've been in the crypto market for 8 years, and XRP was one of my first investments back in 2017. When I started out in cryptocurrencies, I bought on Coinbase. If anyone remembers those days, you had to buy on Coinbase, then transfer your money to Bitfinex or some other exchange, one of the few that existed back then, and from there you could buy cryptocurrencies. I bought IOTA, I bought Dash, I bought Bitcoin, I bought XRP, and a few others. I started out making money and ended up losing it. Why? Because I had no idea. As the years went by, what I focused on was learning as much as possible. And in this video, we're going to talk not only about speculation, but also about the utility market, which is one of the arguments, and a valid one, that is often made for XRP. We can see that there are two major surges. The first happened when the token appeared, shooting up by this whole amount. The second was when we transitioned from 2017 to 2018, 2 cycles ago, finishing on December 17th, 2017. At the beginning of 2018, XRP became the second most important cryptocurrency, reaching a market cap of 130 billion. From there, it retraced, and in the next cycle, in the previous 2020 to 2021 period, it didn't manage to reach its ADH, among other reasons, precisely because of the regulatory issues it had with the SEC. Fortunately, it has now managed to get past that and has a clear path to scale a bit more. Being able to scale a bit more doesn't mean it can scale infinitely. That's something we really need to keep in mind. Just because an asset can scale a bit more doesn't mean, and this is something a lot of people get confused about, that having a clear path means it's suddenly going to jump from $2 to 10,000 or 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever amount. So now, let's move on to the next point. And that next point is precisely about time and price. My Kansas subscription just expired. Well, I'll renew it soon. What do I mean by this? When an asset increases in value, that's something beneficial. It's something we make money from. It's something where, speculatively, we earn money. Time is also an important factor because it's not the same to double your money in 2 years as it is to double it in 5 years. It's not the same to make $1,000 in 2 years as it is to make $1,000 in 5 years. Inflation and the loss of purchasing power will mean that, over time, that time price profitability will eventually reach a point where it's just not worth it. If we have to wait 35 or 40 years for XRP to reach $100, it won't be worth it, simply because we won't be able to enjoy that money, we won't be able to make use of it, we won't be able to spend it on our loved ones, on our people. Sure, we'll have it as part of our estate and we can leave it to the next generation, but we won't be the ones to benefit from it. That's exactly why it's super important to take both price and time into account. XRP has already been in the crypto market for 12 years, almost 13 if we count from when it really appeared. And right now it's at $2. Currently, XRP is at $2. 13 years. How much time do we need for it to reach $1,000? Is it going to happen overnight? Is it going to happen in just a few months? In just a few months, is it going to go from 50, from 30, from $20, which I personally think, over the years, is a level, a metric, a price that could actually happen as time goes by. $20, 30, even 50, you could actually see it reaching those prices. We're already talking about pretty large market capitalizations. We're also talking about a pretty significant amount of money for an asset that already has a relatively decent background. But when we talk about amounts like $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, personally, I think that doesn't make any sense. And in the next point, or in one of the following points, we're going to talk precisely about that. In this video, we're not going to talk about or get into the rhetoric of what XRP could mean at an institutional level. We'll leave that for a second part. In this video, we're simply going to focus on logic, on metrics, on data. We're not going to focus on hypotheticals, on things that could happen in a certain way and would have to happen with XRP for it to really have all the potential people say it has. And here we go straight to market cap compare, the go-to site for, let's be honest, indulging in mental fantasies. And the biggest mental fantasy we can have is precisely with XRP. Let's put XRP on the left side and let's put XRP on the right side. If we look directly at the ADH, we can see that XRP reached $3.22 in this cycle, and considering how the tokens are being unlocked, that's going to go down a bit. You can make the comparison. If you put Solana on one side and Solana on the other, you'll realize that with the inflation Solana experiences over the months, the price is going to drop precisely because of its relationship with the market cap. XRP's market cap is 190 billion, and a little later, the next point in the video will be about utility and speculation. So don't worry, because we're going to get to that point. What does it mean that XRP has practically reached 200 billion in market capitalization? If we go directly to a website, the most important one, where it shows us the total capitalization of the top 100 assets on the planet, we can see that in position number 100 we have CATL. We can see that in position number 98 we have Qualcomm. XRP has reached as high as position number 91. 90 has the asset with the highest market capitalization on the planet, the 90th most important asset in the world. We're not talking about just any nonsense here. There are plenty of companies we use every day, many very large companies, that don't even appear here. I mean, we're talking about really big companies with a long history like Iberdrola, a Spanish company that doesn't show up here. The case of BBVA. I got it wrong. BBVA doesn't appear here. Caixa doesn't appear here. Companies that are already very large don't appear here. In fact, if we compare XRP to Bitcoin, and this is just basic logic and math, XRP versus Bitcoin, we can see the following. If XRP were to perform right now and reach the same market capitalization that Bitcoin currently has, it would hit $36. If we go straight to the all-time high, it would reach $37. Again, I'm not saying that XRP isn't a good cryptocurrency. I'm not saying that XRP doesn't have good fundamentals. I'm not saying that XRP is a bad investment. It's just that we often mix up these terms. We often confuse someone saying that XRP will reach $1,000 or $10,000 as automatically being FUD. We're going to make another video in the future about whether XRP is a cult, because honestly, it has all the sides. XRP is a cryptocurrency that gives people hope, that gives people the need to believe. XRP almost seems like God. XRP right now acts like certain cryptocurrencies did in the previous cycle, where people thought that by investing $100, it would literally change their lives, just like we're going to calculate a bit later with XRP. And we can see the following. If XRP really reached $1,000, it would push Bitcoin into the background. Bitcoin would be pushed into the background, and by a huge margin, by an amount that just doesn't make sense. Bitcoin would be at $500,000, and XRP would have such an advantage over Bitcoin that people probably wouldn't even talk about Bitcoin anymore. The important thing would be to talk about XRP. And let's move straight on to the next topic, speculation versus utility. One of the strongest arguments, and one that makes perfect sense, is that XRP is not about speculation. In the long term, XRP will be about utility because of its role in the financial system due to the agreements it will have with institutions, regulators, banks, countries, investment funds, companies, and so on and so forth. And it ends up making speculation turn into utility, and it makes perfect sense that in that case, XRP could reach $1,000 or even $10,000. Again, this video is not about spreading FUD about XRP. This video is simply saying that XRP is never going to reach $1,000 or $10,000. I don't think that's FUD. I think it's just my opinion. I don't think that's FUD. FUD would be saying that XRP is going to go straight to zero. That could be considered FUD. But I can see XRP at 10, 15, over the years, $20, 25 that I could buy into. But anyway, for those who don't know, I have a degree in psychology. I understand mental topics, human behavior, etc. The argument that XRP will have utility isn't entirely valid, because even with utility, there's still speculation. For example, when you have a partner, okay, and you want to have a child with that partner, and you're a responsible person, you're both responsible people. You're speculating that in the future, as the years go by, you'll still be with that partner. That's exactly why it makes sense. Or you're speculating, you have the expectation that it makes sense to have a child with that person precisely because you expect to spend your whole life with that partner. In the same way when you get married, in the same way when you buy an apartment because you want to live in it for its usefulness, not to speculate. At no point when you buy an apartment do you think, what if it gets struck by lightning? What if the apartment burns down? But you also have to speculate that the area isn't problematic, that there aren't squatters in that area, that there's no violence there, and so on and so forth. In life, we're always speculating, just like even when we think about utility, the simple fact of imagining that it could reach $1,000 or $10,000, and you do the math and daydream about the money you could make with XRP by thinking about its utility, you're already speculating with that. Another thing that's talked about a lot, if you have 20 XRP cryptocurrencies and each one is worth $1, and suddenly the last one jumps to $30, automatically all of them are worth $30. That could be the case, but it only happens for a very brief moment, because if it goes from $1 to $30 instantly, it means two things. First, that there's practically no liquidity in that asset. Second, that there's no arbitrage. And because of arbitrage and market making, when something jumps from $1 to $30, all the market makers are automatically activated to bring it back down from $30 to $1, $1.02, so that there's parity, so that the price of that cryptocurrency actually makes sense. Right now, Bitcoin can't just go from one day to the next. Using the XRP example, Bitcoin can't go from 100,000 to 700,000 overnight, because if it did, which is actually less extreme than the $1 to $30 jump with XRP, for example, it would mean that the next day it could drop from 700,000 to 150,000, and the day after that it could go to 500,000. This happens a lot with cryptocurrencies that don't have good market depth, that have too much slippage. In short, they lack liquidity. A cryptocurrency that already has some history, that has a track record, that is truly established in a market, can't just go from 1 to 50 overnight. It can't happen because the next day it could go from 50 to 25, and the day after that it could go from 25 to 42, and so on and so forth. It has to rise in an organic or inorganic way. I can totally accept the argument that suddenly XRP could go from $2 to $4, just like it did in November 2024 when it went from 50 cents to $3. A tremendously good performance. And I'm glad that everyone who owns XRP, and by the way, I also have XRP, made money with XRP. But it's one thing to go from 50 cents to $3, and it's a whole different story for it to now go from $2 to $10,000 or to $1,000. Let's move on. If we go straight to ChatGPT and ask it the question, can XRP reach $10,000? And if we scroll down a bit, no, it's practically impossible for XRP Ripple to reach $10,000. Here's why. Mathematical limits and economic impossibilities. At that price, the market cap of XRP with its circulating supply of around 55 to 58 billion. By the way, in the previous video I mentioned that over the years, more XRP will appear. In fact, in one of the previous videos, we calculated that on average, by the year 2030, XRP will have roughly 70-something billion coins in circulation. If it follows the same logic from 2013 to 2025, obviously there could be a margin of error, but it's a starting point to have some benchmarks. 70-something billion coins, or in other words, it's going to get diluted. The project will even need more money within the project itself. It would reach between 550 and 1,000 trillion USD, surpassing the world GDP several times over. Even reaching $100 per token would mean a market cap of about 5.5 trillion US dollars, which is already highly unlikely. Where do these predictions come from? Further down it says realistic predictions and reasonable ranges. BitGet analysts say XRP could reach $5 by 2025 if institutional adoption continues. $5 by the end of 2025 seems reasonable to me. I think it makes sense, it could happen, and personally, I'd like to see it happen. More conservatively, other estimates place it between $3 and $7 for 2025 based on adoption, regulatory developments, and Ripple partnerships. Something reaching $7 would surprise me a bit more, but I could buy into it. $7 could happen if USDT transitioned to other altcoins, if Bitcoin dominance shifted to other altcoins. I think $7 by 2025 could happen. It's already a bit more complicated. There would be a threefold increase or so from the current moment, but it could happen. Looking ahead, optimistic forecasts set highs of $10 to $20 within a decade or decade and a half, assuming mass adoption in cross-border payments and the DeFi market. And I think exactly the same. When I calculated the price of XRP in previous videos, it actually came out to about $13 for the year 2030. And personally, I think that's a very good price for a cryptocurrency that's currently worth $2. Given the track record it already has, the market capitalization, and the institutional adoption it's achieved, there are already a lot of people who have invested in XRP. I think making a sevenfold return on an asset with this kind of background is pretty good. And again, the argument, Johnny, imagine having invested in Bitcoin back in 2010. It doesn't make sense because XRP has already been on the market for more than 10 years. Finally, and this is what I mean when I talk about expectations, speculation, and what we would like to see happen. Someone who invests $100. Pay close attention to what I'm about to say. If someone invests $100 in XRP right now, let's round it to $2. And if XRP were to reach $10,000, that would mean they'd make $500,000. Someone who invests $1,000 in XRP, which I personally believe most people, with work, effort, and saving a bit, can manage to invest $1,000 in an asset without too much trouble. If XRP really reaches $10,000, they'd have $5 million. I'm not even going to mention $10,000 because if you invest $10,000 and it goes up 5,000 times from where it is now, we're talking about $50 million. Don't we realize that this makes no sense at all? Don't we realize that we're talking about amounts of money that are just beyond us? And in this video, we're only talking about logic. I'm going to make another video where I'll talk about numbers, about the agreements XRP has, about things XRP is doing to gain utility over the years. I'm not saying that over the years XRP won't have utility. In fact, it already does, and it has a utility that's quite interesting, really good for the financial system. But that's one thing, and it's another thing entirely to think that by investing 1,000 over time, you're going to make 5 million. And the question is this, how long would you have to wait to make 5 million? Or do you think that's going to happen within 10 years? Right now, if you put $1,000 into XRP, in 10 years you'll have 5 million. In 20 years, would you have 5 million? In 30 years, would you have 5 million? In 40 years, would you have 5 million after investing 1,000? Is it worth 5 million? Will you be here in 40 years? Does it make sense? Are you going to take advantage of it? Is anyone going to take advantage of it? That's what we need to start asking ourselves. And one of the things I said in previous videos is that XRP might, when a bear market comes, drop in price again, that XRP could fall back to a dollar and a half, 75 cents. I think there are a lot of people for whom this is their first crypto cycle who don't really know what happens because they haven't experienced it. They just see the numbers, but they haven't actually felt it. What happens in a bear market? In a bear market, people go crazy because they actually see their cryptocurrencies drop in price. I'm not saying that now XRP is going to drop from $3 or $5 or $7. which it could reach in 2025 down to 20 cents, 75 cents, or $1. But it will definitely have a pretty big correction, and there will probably be a better time, statistically speaking, to accumulate XRP, considering the appreciation it has had in 2024. Again, this is not FUD. I'm very, very happy. This is not FUD. What I'm saying about XRP is not FUD. It's not FUD against XRP. I'm simply saying, and we'll make a second video about this, I'm simply saying that it's not going to reach $1,000 or $10,000. For me, as an investor, that doesn't make any sense at all. For me, thinking about a use case that would make XRP reach $10,000 just doesn't make sense, plain and simple. It could have utility, sure, to reach $20, $30, $40, $50 at most. 10,000, 1,000, that just seems way too much to me. Do we really believe that by investing $1,000 we're going to make 5 million? Let's think about it logically. Ask yourself that question. From $1,000 to 5 million. Seriously, think about it. Guys, see you in the next video. Take care and see you next time.